everyone, and welcome to day 9 of Art with Miss Choate. Pepper wanted to be in on this video. We've had a couple of requests to see her again. Oh, now she's gonna leave me even though I'm sitting on her rug. So what we're gonna be doing today is we're gonna be working on collages, and this is something I want to wait later on until we had a few projects together, because you can actually use some of the art that you've created with me earlier that maybe you didn't like or maybe was practice, but there's no point to throw it away, especially right now while we're all isolated and we're not going out. We don't want to be throwing these things away. We want to hold on to them, right? We want to hold on to them, no throwing away. That made her upset. We don't want to be throwing those things away. So we're going to be making collages, and basically if you have some magazines in your house, I have a few, or if you have an old book that is like this one falling apart, it's still good though. It's still good for something. We can cut words out of it, we can arrange it. So we're gonna be taking some old art, maybe some old books, old magazines, maybe even that foil if you still have it from our project. If you have some remnants left, that could be really interesting in our collage. And we're gonna talk about how even if you don't have all the supplies, even if you don't have glue, right? What if you don't have glue in your house, Pepper? There's other options we can do instead. So everyone can collage, it doesn't matter what you have. So let's get started. So the first thing we want to think about while we're getting set up to do a collage are our supplies. Now the normal supplies are scissors, glue, and our paper. And then the scraps, newspapers, magazines, gift wrap, fabric, old art, all these things can be used. But if you don't have the normal supplies, then here are some substitutes. So the first is flour and water. You will mix these two things up until they're kind of like a paste. The other one, and this is probably the one I've used the most, slash I think is the best and easiest. The other one is cornstarch syrup, which lighter syrup, so like a corn syrup, and white vinegar. This one is nice, however, not everyone has corn syrup in their pantry or white vinegar. Obviously, tape, easy substitute. And then if you only have a little bit of glue, like if you only have a bottle of glue, then you can add water to it, make it more liquidy. It doesn't have to be that thick to work. So if you only have a little bit of glue, you know, put some water onto a bowl, put the glue in there, mix it up, and then you can even use a paintbrush to be putting that glue down. The last thing I didn't put on my list is a stapler. We can get creative with that. If you don't want to glue anything together, you just want to staple your pieces together, that can also work. And then scissors. If you can't find scissors, then there's a couple of things. One, people forget about the kitchen scissors. Hopefully if you're working with a younger student, you have some kid scissors. Or if you don't have that, a mat, like a cutting mat or a cutting board, and a straight edge with a knife, or if you have a bone folder or a little blade. These things can work when it comes to cutting, or the very, very simple, rip. You know, that's the obvious way to go when you don't have any of these things. So ripping also works, but we can also play with some other tools you have around the house. It can add some interesting texture to our work. So here are some ideas for, especially I know not a lot of people have glue at home, so some options. So the first thing you're going to need is your background paper, where everything else is going to be glued or somehow applied to. One thing I forgot to mention, if you don't have glue and you don't want to do any of those glue techniques, you can actually just arrange your art on top of a piece of paper and take a picture of it. I do that a lot of times with pre-K3, pre-K4, and kindergarten. I'll pre-cut shapes and just have them arranged, and you can do that with any paper. So first, we're going to have to cut out some of either our old artwork. If there's an image you didn't particularly like, or like this one, it's okay, but I didn't finish. I can go back and finish it. This one, I think there's some interesting parts, but I'd like to collage it, so you can go in and carefully cut. Remember I talked about if you still have that foil. Even just crumpled up foil could be an interesting texture. Now don't forget about magazines. This is probably one of the most classic ways you see people do collages. But you wanna be, like, don't just cut out this image and stick it in there. You know, you wanna be thoughtful. Maybe you cut out, I like this leaf over here. So if you need to, you could cut out the whole thing, or you can just cut out that one leaf. And we'll cut out these three. This is where having an idea already can help. Don't be too sad about this book. Remember I showed it was falling apart. So I could either cut an organic shape out of this page. Maybe I'm thinking about a landscape. There could be a landscape at the bottom of my page. I'm starting to brainstorm already. Maybe you want to cut all these pieces up and then arrange. Maybe you want to think, and don't get rid of the little ones. They might come in handy somewhere else. Also think about the positive and the negative shape. Positive. So here's our positive, here's our negative over here. Or maybe how can they arrange? Maybe I could put them back together. So I'm just gonna leave them here. I'm gonna start to think about your subject matter. Is it realistic or is it abstract? To have a conversation, if you're doing this with a partner, or you're doing this with a family member, what kind of things are you interested in? Do you really like animals? Do you really like geometric shapes? Do you want to try to create a picture of what you're looking at, looking outside your window? What do you want to make? This can be a great project to do as a team. So if you're doing this with a younger student, maybe they're cutting out the abstract shapes and they can point out images they like in a magazine, and whoever is better with the scissors can do that careful cutting, or it's great practice. This is really good dexterity. Remember teaching younger students how to hold scissors correctly. Thumb through the little hole, as many fingers as can fit through the big. Try to make sure if your student is holding scissors like this, or they're holding them wrong, correct them. You could just gently keep redirecting them to hold them the correct way. Now technically the right way, you can rest your scissors with this part on the table as you're cutting to give you that stability, but you can also float in the air and move around like this. Remember to use a variety of shapes, sizes, colors, patterns. Don't be afraid to mix up what you're doing. If you were using scissors for a while, now go in and rip. Do you want to be careful? Try to rip where your finger is on each side so you guide the rip, or you could just go, that's what happens. Do you want to be a little carefree, or do you want to be super controlling of that rip? I'm going to bring it over here. So we can control our rip. I could put that, maybe I don't like this side, I could think about having it be covered. I like that. And again, I'm not gluing yet. I haven't even touched my glue. I'm still arranging, cutting things out. Now remember I told you about other ways if you don't have scissors. So ripping just carefree is one way. Or you could fold if you want some geometric. Crease it and take your nail and really hold down tight like this. You can go that way, go the other way with your nail. Go back and forth just a few times, you'll feel it. You'll feel that it's really creased. Now you can hold your hand here and pull at an angle, and look at that beautiful, beautiful edge. So now actually I kind of like that maybe up here. So we can rip, we can fold, and then so we get a nice line. Remember to fill up your page. You have the pieces overlap. Remember, overlap means the pieces go on top of each other. So they're not just floating independently on the page, not touching. They're interacting with each other. They're not following social distancing rules. They're overlapping, they're touching. I want to make sure, like we've been talking about, I haven't touched the glue yet. You want to arrange your composition before you start gluing. So I want it to be relatively in place. Now remember, even if you don't want to make up any glue, then what we have right here, take a picture. Oh, you don't like that way? Okay, keep that picture, rearrange it. Maybe that could be kind of like a cloud. Take another picture. Once you have your space arranged the way that you like it, now you can have empty space. Remember, this is called our negative space. These are our positive space. So you can leave it this way. I kind of feel now that it's a little too empty, so maybe I could go in and put a few more maybe geometric down here. Okay, now I think I'm happy with how the space is. Now we can go to our glue. So if you have a glue stick, I always tell my kids, make sure you know where your glue cap is so we don't lose it. It's a little more important when we're in school versus when we're at home. And it's gonna be a little hard. You're gonna go for things lower first. I can move this off. Don't take the whole thing off, empty it out. You'll forget where things go. Pick one piece up at a time, a little bit of glue. You don't need to cover this entire thing. Go to the corners, a little dab. I tell my kids, do not put that glue stick all the way up because it's gonna wanna fall out and you're gonna use too much glue at once. So just a little bit out. Now, with the glue stick, you have to work a little faster because it will dry if you're like me and talk too much before you put it down. Now I can put this piece down. If you're using a glue bottle or glue paste, little dots, or you can put it in a little dish and use a brush. Now this one's completely on the book, so I can add it. This one was half on and off the book, so I'm only gonna add glue to the bottom. That way, that's ready. Now remember, the sky's the limit as to what you want to do. I just created a little bit of space here and I kind of enjoy it. So I'm going to leave it. Just because I'm doing a collage doesn't mean it has to be flat. If I want to add a little texture, a little volume or three-dimensional aspects, I totally can. You're the artist. You're creating this. Feel free to put your hand on your work and lift some up and put the glue directly on the paper if you're worried that you'll forget where these pieces go. Like here, I have a lot of overlapping happening, so I might want to hold things down, glue what I can, what's obvious. And now I can come back to here. Remember, a little bit of glue goes a long way, so I just made a little triangle underneath it. And now I can see, okay, this is still free. I can add a little there. That's all glued down. That was pretty easy. So, like I said about letting the elements come off the page, you can also do that here. You could fold it so they kind of come at you a little bit. The sky is the limit. You're telling yourself what you can and cannot do. Even though I'm showing this as one idea, even though I'm showing this to you as my example, I don't want your example to look like mine. Take it in your own direction. The other thing you can do is you can go back in with markers, colored pencils, add lines, add detail, maybe do a drawing on top of this. Maybe this is just the start. Where can this take you? The other option I want to show you that I mentioned previously in the video about, I do this for pre-K 3, 4, and kindergarten. If you don't have glue or you just don't feel like tackling that right now, that's fine. You could take either a piece of a magazine or a newspaper, or have them pick a piece of art that they want to rearrange. You can word it to them like, let's make a weaving, or let's create something new out of something you don't care about. And you can take the scissors and cut strips. You could cut some geometric shapes. If you feel confident and you want to have them do it after you show them, have them make a couple of geometric shapes. You can go through creating those shapes, and then you can give them a pile, and it's kind of like a puzzle. You can say, you know, recreate it. It's a little more interesting if you have a few pieces, a few different art pieces. But how can we rearrange it? And you could put this on a piece of colored paper, and you can ask them like, what's your favorite thing? Do you want to make an animal? I see a lot of kids wanting to make animals, landscapes, flowers. So talk to them about just arranging these. And the really fun thing about this is there's no right and wrong. If they don't like it or they get frustrated, it's easy, boom, move it to the side, put a different piece down. And they can do this as many times. You could keep this in a Ziploc baggie, and they could make it again and again, or do different little things with it. If we don't like that one, like I said, boom, clear it away. We could think about a flower. If you have colored paper, you could also cut up a bunch of different colors. If you're like me and we don't have any colored paper in the house, you could simply color sections. Like let's say your student wants an orange piece. You could just quick color it with a marker, or they could color it. And there you go, you got an orange, or you could cut up into a bunch of different shapes. Just use what you have around the house. You'll be surprised how much you can make and how fun this can be, rather than just your typical drawing, painting. It really pushes you to make differently and create things you didn't think you could make, or things that your student didn't think they could make. One of the last things I mentioned was if you don't have glue, don't have scissors, but you still want to create, maybe you even have limited paper, feel free, express yourself, try new things. What would happen if you just used a stapler? What would happen if you didn't have that base page and you're trying to create something using a stapler? So remember, I'm just giving you some ideas. I want to see what you create, what's in your mind. Oops. I'm not sure, I'm thinking about like a dinosaur. Remember, there's no right and wrong with these. If you want to try to staple pieces together, make a little animal. You see that? Oh, he moves. I just discovered that. I kind of like that. So if you want to try to make a little animal collage puppet thing, if you want to do a more typical collage, think about texture, think about it can even come off the page like we did over here. Or with some younger students, if you want to just cut some organic shapes out of different pieces of paper you have lying around the house, and they can arrange them. Thank you for joining us today, and hopefully you learned something about collage. You use the scraps around your house, fabric, paper, newspapers, anything you had. So I hope you learned something new, and tune in with us tomorrow for another exciting video. Please comment, like, subscribe, share this. Remember, anytime we create, we're spreading some joy in the world. So create with the ones you're stuck in the house with. Send those images maybe to a friend, a coworker, a fellow student at your school. You know, spread some of that joy, spread some ideas, and keep creating every day. All right, bye.